My husband has informed me that he intends to go on a gaycation with his bill in Ibiza. How should I handle this? Original post. Hi there, I really wish I didn't have to make this post, but here goes. So me and my husband have been happily married for about 16 years, give or take. We both have stable careers, good family life, and are fairly fortunate despite the cost of living racking the UK right now. We have 2 boys, 15 and 10, and up until this Sunday, thought we had it pretty good. We argue sometimes, of course, but never get too bad, and we have a pretty decent sex life with some exploration, but I won't get into that. Long and short is, on Sunday, just after I dropped our boys off at their friends, my husband asked me if we had the house alone and, more importantly, do I have a minute? I said yes, and he sat me down, then got out this printed poster for some sort of orgy, and started explaining to me the concept of a gaycation. How it's where straight men go to somewhere with sun, sand and booze, and become gay for the duration of the trip, but that's fine because it doesn't actually count, because what happens on the gaycation stays on the gaycation. I was just completely silent and mortified, even more so when he said he was looking into booking a trip to Ibiza next year with his BIL, his sister's husband, to experience it for himself. When he finally let me speak, I just said, I need him to be clear with me, is he gay? Because if yes, that's okay, but we need to figure out what happens going forward. I didn't let myself get angry or upset, I was just stunned. He swore up and down how he's not gay and he's 100% attracted to women and of course still loves me and our boys. So I said, well, do you think you're bi maybe? And he got very defensive, saying how I need to drop the accusations and that this is the beauty of the gaycation. It allows straight men to experience gayness without actually being gay and how it's like going to an aquarium. And again, he was adamant he doesn't find men's bodies or genitalia exciting at all, but he needs to experience this apparently. I said, well, I'm really not comfortable because even if he was bi, this would be explicitly cheating on me, and he got angry and reiterated he's not, because that's the beauty of the gaycation, etc. I just had enough and left the room. I ignored him for the rest of the day, but we spoke at tea where I again asked him, why does he want to do this so badly if he's not gay? He said how he's interested in how gay men's lives differ to straight men's and that unfortunately, once the gaycation begins, it's simply impossible for a man to resist and he must surrender himself mind, body and soul, to the gaycation or be destroyed. I really can't put into words how surreal it was, because he was speaking so matter-of-factly and he again insists this is a thing that straight men do all the time and how he's actually doing it a bit late. I just said to him if he has any love for me then he can't go ahead with this, and if he does, the marriage will be dead. We didn't speak anymore after that. Since then he's mentioned no more of it, but somehow, and this is what scares me a lot too, that decision genuinely seems to be tearing him up. He didn't go into work on Monday, and only went in half a day yesterday, because he told them he just felt too ill and he just looks distraught every time I see him. I really don't think he's wholly gay though. I can absolutely believe he's bi, but I'd rather we talked about that in a healthy way rather than this incredibly weird denialism around going on a sex holiday to Ibiza. Has anyone known straight guys to do this and come back and just go back to being straight? Like, surely that can't be a thing that happens. I'm so out of my depth here and I just don't know how to even initiate the conversation. For the record, I also haven't mentioned it to his sister yet. I don't know how I'd even break it to her. Thanks for any help, I just don't even want to think so. Being able to get this out there has helped even just a little bit. Edit. Wow, this blew up. This has been incredibly sobering and I think I've now confirmed what I already knew to be the case. The marriage is dead, one way or another. In a way I was in denial about that. I have contacted my SIL and she initially screamed at me, calling me a liar and even insisted I was trying to steal her husband. She rang me back shortly after, apologized and admitted she was in deep, deep shock. I have asked my parents to look after the boys and we're going to meet tomorrow to discuss this deeper. I have also texted my husband and told him he will need to make alternative accommodation arrangements, but he will not be sleeping here tonight and a bag will be waiting for him. Not sure if the mods want to lock the post or not, but I think I've got my answers. Thank you for all the kind words, especially Champion Flight, who really gave me the good dose of reality I needed. P.S. I see a lot of people asking about the aquarium, and at risk of doxing myself, there is a pretty famous aquarium in the UK called the Deep. At the very end you walk through a tunnel that goes underneath the main fish tank, so it's quite immersive, I suppose. My husband explained the aquarium thing and that it's a bit like that. You go there and you observe the fishes, you even get a bit up close, but you never actually enter the water, get emotionally invested, or become a fish while gay, so it doesn't really count. It was a very bizarre analogy, and I pointed out it still makes no sense, and he just got more in a huff and how I just don't get it. And frankly I still don't. Relevant comments. Commenter 1. Your husband isn't proposing a gaycation. He's proposing cheating on you with men while using magical thinking to pretend it doesn't count. The fact that he's planning this with his sister's husband makes it even more disturbing. His bizarre explanation about surrendering mind, body and soul isn't straight man curiosity, it's someone desperately trying to justify exploring his sexuality while keeping his heterosexual marriage. His depression about not being able to go isn't about missing a vacation. It's about being forced to confront his sexuality without his convenient, "what happens in Ibiza stays in Ibiza," excuse. His meltdown over not going shows how desperately he wants to avoid facing this reality. I read over this multiple times and I guess the worst part is I know you're completely right. OOP should consider about the divorce. OOP. I wanted to avoid the divorce option but, I guess it's the only option isn't it? Commenter 2. So this is just a thought, but I'm wondering if he was really planning on doing the gaycation or if that was just a cover to try to get you to agree to it. What if the real plan was to get with women while he's down there? That. I hadn't really thought of that tbh. And now the thought terrifies me. From the way he was talking about men, the fact he had a poster for a gay orgy, I mean it's one hell of a bluff surely. Commenter 3. Tell him you are gonna have a straight action while he's gone and you are going to surrender mind, body and soul to other men. Honest to God, if my husband proposed this to me, I'd use his time away to pack up, move out and have divorce papers waiting for him. Update, November 28, 2024. So when I last posted, I'd contacted my husband to tell him he wouldn't be staying at home tonight and a bag would be waiting for him. As you can imagine, we argued. Quite badly. I won't go into the specific details but no, I'm 100% on board with the fact at a minimum he's bi, might even be gay altogether. We've had arguments in the past but I've genuinely never seen him have such a childish tantrum before, screaming about how I just don't understand the gaycation, absolutely despise that phrase now, and insinuating I'm actually homophobic because I refuse to allow him to participate in this cultural exchange with the gay community. A lot of you asked him if it'd be acceptable if the roles were reversed and I did say would it be acceptable if I went and slept with other guys during that week. Like fucking clockwork, he was very angry and offended, saying it's completely different because a gaycation means nothing and what happens on the gaycation, stays on the gaycation etc. So doesn't actually count. Whereas I'd just be straight up cheating? Well, I turned it around on him. No, but you see what happens in Manchester stays in Manchester. It doesn't mean anything, it doesn't count. It's like birdwatching. And I think it got through to him. He went all quiet and then started crying, admitting the thought of me sleeping with another man is destroying his heart but relationships need sacrifices, so agreed, while in tears, that when he goes on the gaycation, I'll get 1 week in Manchester to do whatever I want. He doesn't want me to, but that's fair in a twisted way, he supposed. I told him to get out of my house. Thankfully he left without a fight. I know it's incredibly petty but I also drained the joint bank account, legal in the UK, so he couldn't try to use it against me. About an hour later, I got rang up by his mum, my MIL, who just screamed and screamed at me about being a cheating whore, how I was horrible, what about the kids, etc. When I finally got my composure back I just said ask your son about the gaycation. Obviously at first she got angry but I said no, just ask him about the gaycation. He'll explain, but she called me a fucking joke and hung up. Later on, getting into the evening, I got another phone call from her in floods of tears. She was very apologetic and I told her she doesn't need to be the one to apologize. She was so upset she put Phil on the phone and while he sounded calm, I could just sort of tell he was on the warpath. Again, very apologetic and said he overheard that phrase, asked my husband and husband initially said no it's nothing before explaining how it's a modern thing, men to do, etc. And gave them the same spiel about how what happens on the gaycation, men cannot resist the gaycation, how a man must surrender to the gaycation etc. FIL just said they told him to leave or they'd call the police, don't care where he goes but he wasn't staying there. Husband tried to call me while I was on the phone but I just ignored it and Phil just said he was so sorry for me and they have my corner in this so. That's one thing. Told them to be there for their daughter because it sounds like Bill is involved, husband didn't tell them that. And Phil just said he had to go because he was so angry. Got a text from my husband after the phone call which was all weirdly rambly, saying about how I'd abused the gaycation to destroy his marriage and destroy his life, and again insisted I, and his parents, were homophobic for doing such a thing. Told him we'll talk when he grows up and blocked his number. I took a day off work myself to have the locks changed this morning so that's £500 gone but whatever, at least I know he won't be coming back. I'm going to look into how to proceed with a divorce and then we'll move from there. Oh of course, there's also my brother-in-law. So I haven't yet met with SIL, she was in such a state and has taken this far worse than I have for reasons that'll be clear soon, We're going to maybe try tomorrow, but we did talk over the phone and I eavesdropped on the conversation with her husband where she put her phone on speaker and I went on mute. Her husband got home earlier, she made him come home, told him there was an emergency, and just said to him, "Can you please explain what a gaycation is?" She told me afterwards she was praying he'd look confused, or just be like what, or anything like that. But instead he just sat her down and explained that a gaycation is a new thing where straight men go to gay hotspots and participate in gay sex acts, but it doesn't count because there's no investment and because what happens on the gaycation stays on the gaycation. He said it's like writing down angry thoughts and putting them in a drawer. You never have to see them again. Whole time, SIL is in tears as he just calmly bats off the same points my husband did about how it doesn't count, and he even did the whole thing. It's impossible to resist, you must surrender or be destroyed shit. I seriously think they must be speaking to a dominatrix or something. Are there even male doms? Because surely neither of them are that into this to actually make that up on their own. I really don't want to go into what was discussed, for her sake, but it did become very apparent to me that the bill is into sissy hypno porn and at times conflated that with the concept of a gaycation. There was this utterly surreal moment where SIL is just trying to wrap her head around this while also in floods of tears, and he explains, so genuinely, so matter-of-factly, that for most men, the gaycation is either a one-time or annual thing, but some men go on the gaycation for years, and others simply never return, because they use hypnosis and mind control to be totally feminized, into a state of permanent pseudo-gayness. She said in disbelief, surely if you're taking it up the arse willingly because you want to, that makes you gay. And he said no, because that's the beauty of the gaycation. You can do all this gay stuff but you don't interact with the wider gay life experience. She asked him if the sissy stuff is what he wanted and he said, not on a long-term basis, and was adamant this is something all straight men do, but she wouldn't get it because she's a woman. Then there were more insinuations of homophobia. Well, that marriage is dead too, I suppose. The whole ordeal ended when she said to him he has a choice to make, and he said, no, he doesn't need to make this choice because the beauty of the gaycation is that it allows him to keep his marriage because it doesn't count. She said that's not the choice is whether he's leaving the house that night or she is. Only good thing he did was leave. Me and SIL spoke about it after that and I'm just, still utterly stunned. I understand she's gone to her parents for support. What exactly did we do to have our lives destroyed in such an abrupt, bizarre, embarrassing way? Per some advice, I'm going to look at devices and bank statements to see if I can find any definitive proof of cheating. After that, I suppose I'll figure out how I tell the boys why their father won't be coming home. Edit. Spoke to another SIL. My husband's family is older sister, him, younger sister, original SIL, and gave her a skimmed-down version of it. She asked her husband, and thankfully he was deeply confused, but then mentioned about 2 years ago at a birthday party, he was approached by my husband and Bill about signing up to some online boot camp around BDSM cross-dressing. He assumed they were taking the piss out of him, so told them to fuck off and never really thought of it again. The fact that this has been going on for that long is making me want to throw up. P.S. For the poster who said about divorce options, I'm actually going to look into adultery because plain and simple that's what this is. Top comments. Commenter 1. Your husband and Bill are deep in a shared delusion that's destroyed 2 families. Their identical talking points about surrender and destruction prove this was coordinated. They're not just planning to cheat, they're already involved in some online community that's warped their thinking. The fact that they both instantly launched into the same script about gaycations shows this isn't spontaneous. You made the right call, draining the account and changing the locks. Their attempts to flip this into accusations of homophobia show how desperately they're trying to avoid responsibility. The identical language, the bizarre aquarium and bird-watching analogies, the talk of surrender or be destroyed. They're in some online echo chamber that's completely divorced from reality. When your husband agreed to let you have a Manchester week while crying, he revealed the whole lie. He knows exactly what this is, cheating. He just wants permission to do it while denying you the same. The talk about hypnosis and permanent feminization reveals just how far this goes. Get a lawyer, protect your assets, and document everything. This will get worse before it gets better. Focus on protecting yourself and your children, because they're too far gone in their shared fantasy to see the destruction they're causing. What a pathetic hill for 2 men to die on. They destroyed their marriages, traumatized their families, and alienated their parents. All while insisting none of it counts, because they made up special rules about it. They want to cheat without consequences, and they've found an online community that validates this fantasy. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you. Dad favored my sister but was rejected. I chose my brother to walk me down the aisle and witnessed karma hit him hard. Dad wanted to take my sister down the aisle first, but she chose our stepdad, so he declined to walk me down the aisle. Dad is crying now and pleading with me to let him. Although I've never been a particularly vindictive person, I do enjoy it when karma is presented in a palpable manner, which is what has occurred. I don't care if that makes me a bad person or a lousy daughter. I couldn't be happier or more arrogant about the whole thing. After years and years of pain and emotional abuse, I am overjoyed to have finally seen justice. My father has made me feel awful as I've grown up. He suddenly remembers this daughter of his that he never really liked in the first place, now that he has no one else to rely on. Out of my 3 siblings, I, F31, am the middle one. Sarah, F29, is my younger sister, and Finley, Finn, M37, is my older brother. We were a happy family for the majority of my upbringing. At least my mom, F59, did her best to be an equal parent, even though my parents had their preferences. My father, M65, is not in the same boat. Favoritism was clearly visible in his actions. His favorite person was Sarah, and since Finn was the son, he naturally felt a connection with him and they could bond over man things. I was, of course, left out of this dynamic. It began at a very young age. I've always had the impression that my father didn't think highly of me. I made a few attempts to express it, maybe by throwing fits because I was a challenging kid overall, but nothing I ever did got his attention. As I grew older, I came to terms with it. I believe Mom tried to make up for his partiality after noticing it. Because I would have remained invisible my entire life if it had been up to my father, I have always adored her for seeing me. Mom did her best to be an equitable parent, but as I mentioned, she was not flawless. She treated us the same and loved us equally. I believe Finn noticed that she made an effort to keep me from feeling excluded. He attempted to fill in after noticing my neglect and my tendency to be distant. When Finn was learning how to change automobile tires, he would ask Dad if I could come along. When Dad taught him how to drive, he made sure I was present. Dad didn't involve me in the chats, so I know it was him. I didn't experience abuse or anything similar. We received similar gifts if they gave them to us. For example, I received as many new outfits as either Sarah or Finn. However, Dad never provided me with any emotional support. Mom and Finn attempted to fill that void in my life for all that time. Sarah, on the other hand, simply enjoyed playing the role of the young princess. She was a snobby child, and her attitude caused her school to raise various concerns. In some way, all of those worries were ignored. She developed into a very demanding and conceited young lady. I am not really close to her as a result. I'm really close to Finn, and he simply can't bear Sarah. Dad is the only one who does not find her behavior problematic. Mom barely puts up with her either. This is the current situation. Mom and Dad split about a decade ago. We have all been kept in the dark about the true reason for the friendly breakup. We all know that Mom and Dad's claim that they are no longer compatible is untrue. Something else is the true cause. Since none of them began dating someone new for a long period after the divorce, I am very sure it wasn't infidelity. We all still don't know the truth, and Mom and Dad have always wanted to keep it that way. There was no custody issue to deal with because we were all adults at the time. Since then, they've generally gotten along well. Since, let's face it, there's no love lost there, I have personally opted to avoid seeing Dad as much as possible. I suppose it works for both of us because he hasn't voiced any complaints about my absence. When I have free time, I usually visit Mom's house, although Finn and Sarah split their time equally between the 2 locations. We never go with Sarah unless it's for Christmas, but Finn and I occasionally plan our trips to Mom's house. Finn simply cannot tolerate her. When viewed from the outside, we appear to be rather normal and functional. But for once, I am glad that things have taken a turn for the worse. Mom began dating Arthur, M60, 5 years ago. They clicked right away after meeting at a yoga retreat. My time with Arthur is enjoyable, and he is a cool guy. He never tries to push limits and is kind to Finn and myself. Since nobody has ever mentioned it and I don't see any justification for him to treat Sarah badly, I'm going to presume that everything is well between them. All that matters is that Mom is happy. Even though Dad is very combative with Arthur, they have a friendly relationship. I believe it's because Dad doesn't have a steady partner and his dating life hasn't been very successful. In addition, Mom's life is opulent in comparison to her life with Dad, and Arthur makes a lot more money than Dad does. We are all pleased for Mom, but I believe Dad is really resentful of the whole thing. The fact that we get along well with Arthur is another thing he dislikes. Dad still acts envious despite Finn's attempts to explain that none of us are taking his place and that we are simply acting like responsible adults in this scenario. All of it is very offensive and childish. Fortunately, since I don't see Dad very often, I don't have to deal with a lot of it. The dynamics of the family are as follows at the moment. Understanding the backdrop is crucial to comprehending the events of the past few days. My fiancée, Kieran, M34, proposed to me a few months ago. We've spent a lot of time together. I prefer to stay private, therefore I didn't make the engagement public right away. After choosing the date, Kieran and I informed our families since we wanted to get married as soon as possible and avoid a lengthy engagement period. 1 week from now, the wedding is planned. My family's response when I told them was conflicted. Arthur was pleased, and Finn and Mom were ecstatic. Sarah appeared pretty unhappy, but Dad's response was fairly neutral. All of this took place during a video call, and I could see that she quickly ended the call after forcing a grin. She detests not being the center of attention, so I was expecting some sort of tantrum, but at that moment, I couldn't stand her theatrics. I informed Finn that I wanted him to be the one to escort me down the aisle, not Dad, and I called him separately to gossip. He remained silent for a time and claimed that although he was deeply moved by my request, he believed it was improper to fulfill and that Dad would make a big deal out of it. He claimed that although he would really like to, he was unable to do so since he didn't want to annoy his father. He said something that hurt me. He understood that I needed him to be there with me since he had been my male protector far more than Dad, and I informed him that I had come to him because I had been let down by Dad on multiple occasions. I hate to say it, but I also felt Finn was making sense, so I didn't argue with him about it. It was an emotional conversation. Gently, he assured me that it didn't matter if he escorted me down the aisle. It was crucial that my day be as uneventful as possible so that I could look back on it with joy and no resentment. If he were to assume Dad's position, he claimed, Dad would remain agitated during the ceremony and spoil the day and the memories for me. He was correct. I knew what Finn said would make my day simpler, if not perfect, and Dad was more than capable of pulling off such a ruse. Finn advised me to discuss it with Dad. I stated I would give it some thought and that I was hesitant to have him escort me down the aisle. Fortunately, Sarah and her boyfriend Zach announced their engagement 2 weeks later. After exchanging glances with Kieran, I knew she would try to steal the show at my wedding or do something else, but I couldn't help myself. Finn was also not very pleased. We were both aware of the timing, but we were unable to change it, so we kept quiet. One positive outcome of this is that Sarah's wedding is scheduled for approximately 5 weeks from now, 1 month after mine. The stars didn't align in her favor, so she had to be content to be the second bride in the family, even though she had really wanted to marry before me. I resisted her attempts to guilt me into delaying my wedding, even though she was rather sour about it. She needed to grow up since I wasn't the type to give in to her whims. Thus, things remained unchanged. But it seems that Dad and Sarah agreed that he would accompany her down the aisle before he did the same for me. I'm not really sure how they came up with something that strange. Since I never had much luck with boys in school or college, I suppose they figured I wouldn't get married or would get married later. In any case, once Sarah announced her engagement, I requested Dad to accompany me down the aisle. He sadly informed me that he had promised his baby that he would accompany her first. Years ago, while she was on her deathbed, which never materialized, he said he had made that commitment. Now, he wouldn't be able to lead me down the aisle because he couldn't break his word and break her heart. To be honest, I was thrilled because I didn't want him to accompany me down the aisle in the first place. I was dancing within as I feigned sadness and hurt. I assured him that even if it hurt, it didn't, I would accept his vow to Sarah because I respected it. I called Finn right away and informed him of the situation. He was upset with his father. Finn stated that he would have seized the chance to accompany me down the aisle immediately if he had known Dad would act in this manner. He said that I could choose whatever daughter I wanted to grant this privilege to if Dad could. I was too delighted to care if Finn was upset with Dad. In the end, it had turned out to be just what I had desired, and I am overjoyed. Despite the pressure of wedding planning, everything was going smoothly. Up until yesterday, when unheard of drama entered my life, drama for which I lacked the stamina, everything looked to be in order, despite my jitteriness and nervousness. Sarah told her father last night that he would not be accompanying her to the wedding. She requested Arthur to do it instead. We were all surprised by this. Not only that, she announced it via video call. She could have been more tactful about it, and it was cruel. We were all aware of Dad's excitement for her wedding. Because she and her fiancé wanted to save money for the honeymoon, he had even covered the entire cost. Dad had nearly mentally checked out of my life, and Mom and Dad were busy organizing 2 weddings. Since all of his attention was on Sarah, he had nothing to contribute or recommend and continued to show no interest in anything pertaining to my wedding. Furthermore, he had not made any financial contributions to my wedding. We were paying for it ourselves, Kieran and I. It had gotten to the point where I was depending more on Mom and Arthur's advice than on Dad's. In contrast to Sarah, Arthur was actively involved in my wedding preparations. Because of this, even Arthur appeared surprised by Sarah's request, or rather, her demand, and was unsure of how to react. When Mom finally stated that Arthur would love to do it, he continued to stare at her. I work in corporate, where terrible calls are almost a given, but that had to be one of the worst calls I've ever been on. Dad was crying. He began cursing out Arthur instead of discussing it with Sarah, and then hung up. And that was all. I didn't ask Dad how he was feeling, but I'm sure the others did. I quickly hung up the phone since I had too many other things to think about. Besides, this wasn't my problem. He didn't want to renege on the commitment he had made to Sarah. It was between them if she broke it. I didn't want or intend to step in. They were able to resolve it among themselves. I wasn't interested in becoming involved in trivial family matters at this time. I had no idea that it would soon cause me great annoyance. A few hours after his little princess dealt him a heartbreaking blow, Dad called me last night in tears. On the phone, he was crying and telling me that he would love to walk me down the aisle now and that he was foolish for turning down my offer. I was shocked by what I heard. It was astonishing how entitled they were. Although I was sorry for what had transpired, I gently explained to him that it was between him and Sarah. It had no bearing whatsoever on my wedding plans. I informed him that this had been decided months prior and that Finn was escorting me down the aisle. I also informed him that I was unable to make a last-minute modification. He promised to speak with Finn, saying that I didn't need to be concerned about Finn's disagreement because Finn was merely a placeholder for him. I explained to him that I didn't want to hurt Finn, not that he agreed. Dad didn't need to know that I didn't want him to be my father in the first place. I informed Dad that no swap was taking place, despite his insistence that he speak with Finn and make amends. The final step was for Finn to lead me down the aisle. He believed I was resisting because Finn wouldn't resign, and he was living in total denial. He was sure he could persuade Finn not to do it. After hanging up, I called Finn right away to let him know what was happening. It would be an understatement to say that Finn was furious. I informed him that I had always wanted him to be the one to reveal my identity when he asked what I wanted. Only at his encouragement did I ask Dad in the first place, and he was the first person I had asked. I replied in the affirmative when Finn asked if I was certain I wanted him to lead me down the aisle. Then he assured me that if Dad phoned him, he would correct him and that I shouldn't worry about anything. Since his favorite had sent him out, I told Finn that I didn't want any drama at the wedding and that Dad needed to realize that he couldn't just walk in anytime he wanted and use me as a stand-in daughter. Finn reassured me that there would be no alteration to the wedding arrangements and that he would make sure Dad knew about it. I haven't spoken to one of them since last evening. I'm getting so anxious about it. I truly don't have the energy to handle this turmoil at this time, and everything was going smoothly. I'm not sure if I should get in touch with them or hold off until I find out what transpired between Finn and Dad. I'm not even sure whether Finn has had a conversation with him yet. The anxiousness is making me queasy, and I'm at a loss for what to do. Update 1. Finn and I eventually spoke, and the situation is a complete mess, even worse than I had anticipated. Fortunately, he has taken care of the majority of it, so I won't have any issues. Finn claimed that he had been expecting a call from Dad to talk about the alleged change in plans, but the call never arrived. Finn recognized then that Dad was not going to talk about anything. Dad reasoned that since he had made the decision to accompany me down the aisle, everyone else must have agreed. After waiting a day for Dad to get in touch, Finn called him. Because I had mentioned something, he asked Dad if the arrangements had changed. In an attempt to appear casual, Dad said that because Sarah would no longer be walking me down the aisle, I had requested him to do so. Now, Finn, the more reasonable and level-headed of the three of us, is typically diplomatic. I was shocked to hear that he went completely crazy on Dad. Finn claimed that since they both knew I hadn't requested Dad to accompany me down the aisle, he urged him to stop being so rude. Rather, Dad had pleaded for the part after his beloved daughter had turned him down. Dad was enraged to hear this. When faced with the truth or anything he doesn't want to hear, he has a tendency to react violently. Finn, however, told Dad to stop talking and listen for once before he could interfere. Finn stated that considering how he had treated me over the years, Dad should be thankful that he was even receiving an invitation to my wedding. Then Finn relaxed. He later expressed regret to me for snapping at Dad, particularly so near the wedding, but he said he was unable to control himself. Finn longed for Dad to see his true self and shed the mask he was wearing. Finn admitted to Dad that he had always given preference to Sarah and had, at most, tried to get along with Finn, but I was never given any thought. In addition, he brought up the fact that I had requested Finn to accompany me down the aisle. I had only asked Dad at first because of Finn's persistence. Finn stated that he had thought Dad would use the occasion to begin repairing our relationship, but Dad squandered his opportunity. Finn said that none of his kids liked or respected Dad, calling him a failure of a father. Because Finn wasn't a fair parent, he didn't respect him. He never made an effort to love me or treat me like his daughter, therefore I didn't respect him. Sarah also didn't respect him since she wouldn't have pulled the prank she did if she did. Finn went on to claim that Dad was the source of Sarah's conceited demeanor. After years of lavishing her with attention, he was now having to deal with the fallout. Finn claimed that since Dad had been throwing out his other children since they were born, it was only fitting that his favorite child would throw out his favorite. Finn told me that although he didn't remember everything because he had shouted in a blinding passion, he did admit that he had spoken more. He reassured me that I didn't have to be concerned about Dad pulling any tricks after he got a harsh reality check. And Finn would take care of it right away if he did. Finn also clarified that the plans remained unchanged. He wouldn't alter the fact that he would be the one to lead me down the aisle. I was more than grateful that he apologized for the drama so close to the wedding. I've never been able to defend myself with such strength in my life. I always believed that I might have done something wrong for Dad to not love me. Over the years, I made an effort to get over that emotion, but I was never successful. Here I had my brother standing up for me, which I never thought anyone would do. When we were children, my mother ought to have defended me, but she didn't. She never challenged Dad, but she made an effort to compensate for the lack of affection in her own manner. Her diffidence and deference to him gave me the impression that I would never be able to confront him about how awful he was to me, though I don't blame her for it. But only because my brother loved me so much that he could no longer stand the idea of my going through this did that change. I was choking when I told him that this was the most beautiful thing anyone had ever done for me, and I was crying by the time he finished recounting the entire episode. It must be the greatest thing I could ever hope for, but I doubt Finn understands the extent of what he has done. Second update, I'm married now. In fact, Kieran and I are presently enjoying our honeymoon in Thailand after getting married a few days ago. Despite some turmoil beforehand, the wedding went off without a hitch. Dad couldn't walk even one daughter down the aisle, and Finn wasn't going to back down. The situation has become really bad. Dad was primarily worried about how his extended family would perceive him if he did not attend the weddings of both children. During his conversation with Finn, he kept returning to this subject. Once more, Finn bluntly informed him that he was emotionally checked out with me anyway, thus he was missing the role of father at least for my wedding. Finn advised him to express gratitude for the invitation in the first place. Since Sarah was his favorite, Dad could only wonder what went wrong with her, and no one truly knows why she did what she did. When word came out, Sarah had the gall to phone me and claim that it was unjust to Dad and that I wanted him to walk me down the aisle because she couldn't. Since she was using Dad's money to pay for her wedding and had expelled him, I encouraged her to have a life. I informed her that I had visited Dad and that, due to some foolish pledge she was unable to keep, he had decided to accompany her down the aisle. She was more than welcome to change things up at her wedding if she was so offended by her beloved father's misery. Since she was feeling awful about Dad, I assured her that Arthur would understand and that I could even speak with him on her behalf. She ended the call since she had nothing more to say. Before the wedding, I called Finn and informed him that I didn't want to be involved in any more father drama. If it came to me, it was his duty to make sure I was finished with this bullshit. I couldn't allow Dad to ruin my day because I had 100 other things to be happy about or worried about. I couldn't allow him to ruin my most memorable day because he had already made me miserable for most of my life. Finn assured me that he would handle everything and that I shouldn't worry. It would be an understatement to say that I was really anxious on my wedding day, but fortunately, everything went smoothly. I'm glad Dad didn't try to start anything, even though he appeared to be rather glum. After a point, I was too preoccupied with having fun to give his pouty face much thought. It was awkward between them, and Sarah tried to avoid Dad as much as possible, but I didn't mind. I'm happy that nobody was able to ruin the wedding because it went off without a hitch. I could feel Dad glaring daggers at my back as Finn led me down the aisle, but that was all he could do. According to what I've been informed, Dad has been left to handle some damage control after a few people questioned why Finn was up there instead of him. That's his cross to carry, then. In order to live a peaceful existence and eliminate any possibility of turmoil, I also want Sarah's wedding to be over. I'm going to cut off communication with Dad for the foreseeable future after her wedding. In any case, I don't see the need to keep in contact with him. Update 2. Yesterday was Sarah's wedding. She didn't ask Kieran and me to the wedding, so I wouldn't know how it went. I'm not sure what she was trying to accomplish, but I was more than willing to watch. It was just Mom, Arthur, and Dad there, and to her dismay, Finn did not go either. At the last minute, Dad reportedly hoped she would change her mind and ask him to lead her down the aisle, But that never occurred. It was quite unpleasant, and it's clear from the pictures she shared that Arthur would much rather be somewhere else. Mom is just finished, Dad is glum, and Arthur is uneasy. I don't really care, but aside from that, her wedding went smoothly. I was called up by Mom to provide these details. Naturally, Dad is unhappy because he had hoped that at least one of us would give in and allow him to do as he pleases. Now, however, his personal life is in disarray and all of his children are essentially cut off from him. I don't care that he isn't handling it well. For being such a bad father to me, allowing me to have a miserable childhood, and even helping to cause it, I genuinely believe it serves him right. I've had enough of him, and I don't want Sarah's or his poison to affect this new stage of my life or my new family. I'm relieved they're no longer in my life. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you. My husband refused to take me to the hospital during labor, choosing lunch with his family instead. What should I do? I'm Selena, 30F, a new mother to Eddie M., who is only a few days old. I wish I could say that my family is happy right now, but they aren't. Everyone around me is pointing the finger at me because I am now going through a divorce. I understand that being a single mother is difficult, but I would stop at nothing to rescue my son from the poisonous atmosphere he would have been in had I not left that marriage. I need some frank feedback because I've made some terrible blunders. Since high school, Robert and I have been dating, and he has been kind to me. He planned dates, got me flowers, took me to get my nails done, and did all the other romantic things that girls like. His mother and sister were the only things he valued more than me, and I never objected to that. I suppose I interpreted it as a positive sign. I actually thought, oh well, he treats the women in his life so well, he is a real gentleman. If I ever get to marry him and become his wife, he will probably treat me even better. I can't even begin to explain how mistaken I was. The hunt ended the moment I married him. The taken for granted phase was the next stage. You don't realize emotional abuse all at once. You realize it over time. When you truly love that man, it's also quite hard to leave something like that. Now that I think about it, I should have recognized that Robert was incapable of setting limits or setting priorities, but love blinds you. Both my mother-in-law, Mill, and sister-in-law, Sil, wore long trains of white and were maid of honor at my wedding. Robert stated it didn't really matter and that I was ruining our special day by being sulky when I brought up the fact that the bridesmaids and maid of honor were expected to wear pink. I should just concentrate on something else instead. But that was not all. They were in every photo, even interfering with the couple's candid shots. My husband said, "The kiddo is just having fun, let her be," in response to the photographer's request that my Sil stop since he was becoming tired. With her in the frame, I'm confident the photos would look better. My Sil is not a child. Next year, she will tie the knot at the age of 25. That day, I felt so ashamed that I came to the realization that I had been mistaken about Robert all along. I was already Robert's wife, though, so it was too late. The one bright spot was that we were able to move in after our wedding because my cousin and his wife had given us a house as a wedding present. Although we didn't spend much time with my in-laws, Robert never stayed at home with me and instead visited them every weekend. He said that we would go on the vacation after his sister was married so that his sister and prospective brother-in-law could accompany us when I pointed out that we didn't even go on a honeymoon trip. It's important to note in this regard that his sister was unemployed and his future brother-in-law was a freeloader. She laughed it off when I tried to explain that marriage entails a lot of financial responsibility and that her brother would handle all of her financial obligations. I didn't bring up the topic again since I knew there wasn't much I could do about it without Robert's assistance, which he didn't provide. Yes, the warning signs were begging to be noticed, but I believed I could save our marriage. I have no idea why I chose to play Bob the Builder, but there I was, attempting to gain his favor by gaining the favor of his family. I chose to accompany Robert after realizing that he would not spend a single weekend with me. His mother and sister were not happy to see him the one and only time I visited. Even more unexpected was the presence of my sister-in-law, Sarah, 26F, and her freeloading fiancé, Dylan, 26M. In essence, I was the only one who was never invited to participate. I explained that I had come to surprise them and that I had brought a cake with me. As though Sarah had told the greatest joke in the world, they all chuckled when my sister-in-law added, "A nasty surprise, I see." Beatrice, 56F, Robert's mother, stated that they didn't have enough food for me because they didn't expect strangers because this was family time. Since I was his wife, I expected Robert to remark something about how much more of a part of the family I am than Dylan, but instead he was staring out the window and was totally absorbed in his thoughts, or at least acting that way. Robert gave me the car keys stoically after I informed him I would drive home. His mother waved goodbye with a smile and advised me not to act like a jealous child and bother Robert in that way. I cried all the way home and left without saying anything because I was so embarrassed. The following day, Robert took me out to dinner at my favorite continental restaurant after returning home that day with flowers and chocolates. Therefore, he was aware of the abhorrent treatment, he simply decided not to confront it. Robert treated me like a queen for the entire week that followed, until the following weekend, at which point he left for his contented family. Until the following weekend, he would return and overcompensate. After a few months of marriage, this occurred, and even the preferential treatment ceased. Dismissal took its place. He would blame me of not understanding his responsibilities to his family and say that I should be accustomed to his Saturday breakfast with his family by now if I ever mentioned how lonely I felt on the weekends and wanted to spend time with him. He frequently accused me of exaggerating. I told my mother about my extreme dissatisfaction. According to Mom, if we had a child, Robert might be more involved and at home and I might not feel as alone. I reprimanded her and told her that having a child would be a very selfish motive, but she managed to get the notion into my head, and I continued to consider it. I might have to drop the child off at my mom's before I left for work because we would both be working parents, but on the weekends, I would be able to spend a lot of time with the child. Wouldn't the baby's father want the same thing? I asked my husband whether he thought we were ready to become parents as I gradually developed a kind of baby fever. He was ecstatic and said that his mother had even hinted at this. He shrugged and stated that his mother was growing old and ready to be a grandma when I asked him why she wanted us to have a child. Therefore, it would be beneficial to have a young man who could look after her. I informed him that I didn't believe he was ready to be a father and that he couldn't use our child to care for his mother. The baby conversation was out of the question after our argument. I'm not sure what changed, but all of a sudden Robert began spending his weekends at home. He resumed his pre-marriage treatment of me, even purchasing tickets to the Maldives for our much-postponed honeymoon. During our week-long honeymoon in the Maldives, Robert made me feel incredibly unique and adored. He claimed he wanted to make amends for hurting my feelings. I fell straight into his trap, foolish as I was. We found out I was pregnant after returning from our vacation. It delighted Robert. Robert persuaded me that we were prepared to become parents, despite my reservations. During the first 3 months of my pregnancy, he took exceptional care of me, taking me to the doctor, making sure I took my vitamins, staying at home on the weekends, ordering all the food I wanted, and shopping for our unborn child. Things returned to their pre-vacation state in the 4th month. He had gotten me pregnant and ensured that I would do all in my power to avoid having the baby. That was the act's entire purpose. I was really depressed in the weeks before my labor. My mom came over to look after me, but she always blamed Robert's actions on his wealth, which was all that mattered to her. The 3rd week of December was my due date. Mom attended her brother's funeral 2 weeks prior to my birth. I was unable to attend my uncle's funeral because the due date was so near. I pleaded with my hubby to spend the weekend at home. My uncle's passing made me sad and lonely. I didn't want to be at home by myself on that particular day. I stated this to my husband and he responded, "Sel, you are going to be a mother and make a lot of sacrifices in the future, so being alone for a day is nothing compared to the sacrifices that you have to make. I will suggest that you better sleep it off. I will see you tonight. Don't wait up for me. I will have dinner with them. Bye, honey, take care. Remember you have to take care of yourself for our little Eddie." He took the car keys and drove off without even waiting for my answer. That particular day, I was feeling very ill, so I went to lie down and dozed off for almost an hour. I woke up with excruciating cramping. I was horrified to discover that my water had burst when I noticed that the bed was damp. I contacted my spouse right away. Before answering, he hung up the phone twice. His voice was absolutely irritated. When I heard my water break, I actually screamed. He said, "So why are you wasting time calling me? Call the hospital or something." I don't know, man. Gosh, you are a grown woman. Pull yourself together and face the situation. I am literally between brunch with everybody. Even Dylan's parents are here. Stop calling me. The line died. After staring at the phone I was holding, I went outside onto the street. I couldn't even drive myself to the hospital since Robert had stolen the car. A man stopped when I flagged down a car. He held the door open for me in a hurry. I was taken to the hospital in a hurry. Mr. Singh, the gentleman, completed all the papers and asked if I wanted him to make a phone call. He came and informed me that no one was answering after I gave him my husband's phone. In that instant, a stranger named Mr. Singh stood up. Eddie was the only person who came to see me after I gave birth. He brought me chicken wings, bananas, and baby outfits. I started to cry. Since my uncle was unable to be present in person, I had the impression that his spirit had sent this man. Mr. Singh gave me a pat on the hand and congratulated me. He muttered a prayer for Eddie after I handed him over to him. I reminded him of his daughter, he said, and I should call him if I ever needed anything. I got his card from him. I noticed that he practiced divorce law. I believed that all of the signals were coming from my guardian angel. I told Mr. Singh without hesitation that I was looking for a place to stay. I desired a home of my own. He offered to transfer me into his penthouse, saying I wouldn't have to worry about the rent until I started working. He turned back before leaving, saying, "By the way, you can call me uncle." That evening, my hubby called in the interim. I didn't answer, but I did see it ring. I requested the nurses not to tell my husband that I was there in case he called since I didn't want him to know. They concurred. My spouse texted me to inquire which hospital I was at. I didn't respond. I was questioned by the nurses if they ought to contact social services. I requested that they refrain. The physicians and nurses were incredibly understanding and nice. My mother would undoubtedly tell Robert where I was, so I didn't even answer her phone. When Uncle Singh arrived the following day, he informed me that everything was prepared for my move-in. Since his daughter used to live there, he claimed there wasn't much to prepare anyhow. It was not long ago that she left the nation to work somewhere in Germany. He claimed that because he missed his daughter so much, it would be pleasant to have someone live in her apartment. His wife was equally excited to meet me, he informed me. I was driven to their tidy and lovely apartment by Uncle Singh. Auntie quickly began discussing ways to make things comfortable for me, even though she was overweight. I kept telling them that all I wanted was to stay there, but they kept asking if I wanted anything. After telling them all that had transpired, I requested that my uncle initiate the divorce process. I replied that I had never believed in anything more when he questioned whether I was certain about it. I was instructed by my uncle to text my spouse about the birth of my son. So I sent Robert an SMS about it. He informed me that I had been really irresponsible and that we needed to go meet his family right now with Eddie. He had the audacity to believe that I would take my son to meet his toxic family, I told him. After a period of silence, he continued. "Don't be a kid. We have to take Eddie to his godmother." When I questioned him who made the decision to name Robert's sister as the godmother, he told me to stop being funny since that was how it was always meant to be. I lost my composure and began to scream, "You know what's ridiculous? It's you. You are the damn joker. I had to take a lift to the damn hospital and give birth alone. If you loved me and your son, you would have rushed to us. You are so damn selfish, and your family is crazy. You are not going to be a part of my son's life. You will hear from my lawyer soon. I am divorcing you." When I hung up, I was furious. Auntie seemed somewhat worried. She said that my spouse was a child and not a man when I hung up. For the first time in a long time, I laughed. When my mother called, she went on and on about how awful I was and how Robert had called to let her know what had happened. She informed me that because I had taken my son away from them, their family was pursuing charges. It seems that I am a self-centered mother who only cares about herself, so I should be hauled to court and have my son taken away from me. They claimed that I was unfit to be a mother because of my depression. I informed my mother that I didn't care about their opinions since I was confident I would win the case and be granted sole custody of my son. I ended the call and made the decision not to answer any more calls from my relatives. In order to augment my income, I began applying for freelance jobs. Even though I had a job already, I needed more if I wanted to provide for my son comfortably. My phone began buzzing nonstop with texts all of a sudden. Dylan's entire family and my in-laws were sending me hateful texts. They were calling me a villain in derogatory terms since I had destroyed their family. "The only thing that is saving you right now is the fact that you don't know your address. Otherwise, we would totally come over and teach you a lesson, you stupid cuss words," they said, threatening to break into my house and take my son by force. Auntie grabbed the phone out of my hand as I was shivering from reading these texts and said, "You're going to eat and get some rest. I will look after Eddie till you wake up. You are not going to check your phone and not stress. Your uncle will take care of everything. When you wake up, your uncle will take you to the police station to lodge a complaint. We need to file a restraining order." I really wanted to vent, and I figured that putting it in writing would help me gather my thoughts. This was written in the bathtub during a lengthy soak. I'm going to bed shortly. The question of whether I made the right decision in preventing Robert from meeting Eddie, however, has been the one that has been plaguing me the most. Will this have an impact on his child's brain? I'm not sure whether Robert's presence would have had a negative impact on him because I don't think he is a good role model in any way. Update 1. Despite my reluctance to acknowledge it, I have been reading your comments and you are correct. Both divorce and the loss of a parent will inevitably affect Eddie in some way. Simply said, I'm happy Uncle and Auntie Singh will show the baby the affection he needs. Yesterday, I spoke with Uncle's daughter. She works as a scientist. I was explaining the situation that led me to her apartment to her. She concluded by saying that God orchestrated the gathering. She was quite concerned about her parents, but for the first time in a long time, she saw her mother truly happy now that I was there. Don't worry about the rent yet, she said. To my astonishment, she returned my gratitude after I did. I feel so fortunate that I cannot express it to you all. Eddie will look up to Uncle Singh as a positive male role model. I've given it a lot of thought, and I believe I will be as honest as possible in my responses to Eddie's challenging questions. I'll make an effort to teach him how to be a man rather than a pet of his mother. We'll have to wait and see, I suppose. Update 2, let's get to the update. Uncle and I went to file the restraining order after I woke up from my nap. I can state with confidence that Eddie is in good hands because Auntie has been taking excellent care of him. Since the restraining order was filed, there's been a lot of calm, but I think I caught a glimpse of Dylan today as I headed to work. I'm not sure if this is just a hallucination or what. I'm not sure. I might have paranoia. I don't want to cause Uncle or Auntie any unnecessary anxiety, therefore I haven't told them about this. Technically, there is nothing preventing Dylan from attempting to get in touch with me because the restraining order has been filed against Robert's family. I don't want them to learn my residence. I'll keep you all informed. Update 3, hello everyone, my penthouse was egged last night. I was by myself. Auntie and Uncle had gone home for the night. I rushed to Eddie's sleeping quarters and embraced him. He was sobbing uncontrollably and really frightened. I was secretly experiencing a panic attack because I felt so frightened and constrained. I attempted rocking Eddie back to sleep after the egging ceased after 15 long minutes since I was immobile. I placed Eddie on my bed and lay awake with him after he fell asleep. When Auntie arrived to meet me the following morning, she was in a complete panic. She wanted me to live with them in their home, but I informed her that it wouldn't make a difference because their house will be egged the next time. Although I believe my hypothesis that Dylan had followed me was correct, we are unable to bring a direct case against him because the law does not allow for speculation. We have accused unidentified individuals of vandalism. As I write this, Uncle is installing cameras and a new security system. Next week is when we have our court hearing. I'll keep you all informed. Update 4, I'm exhausted. This will only be a brief update. All I want is for the hearing to end. At this point, the drama is becoming excessive. Dylan attempted to break into the house last night. The security system alerted 911 right away, and he was apprehended. He had a black balaclava on. The police took him away. Upon questioning, it was discovered that they intended to abduct Eddie. Then, custody would go to Robert, and I might be seen as a negligent mother. However, the entire game was altered by the fact that he was captured. They have absolutely no chance of winning now, and more significantly, some of them will be going to jail. Update 5. The kidnapping was rejected by Robert's family. Yes, I'm not at all surprised. Dylan was completely enamored with Sarah, but she has since left him. My uncle told me that no one ever paid Dylan a visit while he was in detention. Uncle gave Robert a lot of attention throughout our court session today. It appears that things will work out for us. Robert rushed up to me and held my hand as I was leaving after the hearing. He wanted me to move back with him and our children after admitting his sins. I was on the verge of giving in, but then I recalled all the times I had done so, and everything had simply returned to normal. I asked him to do his foolish stunts on someone else after taking my hand away from his. I told him that he needed to mature and that it was unrealistic to expect a man who didn't act like an adult to raise a child. It is unheard of for a child to raise another child, is it not? The microphone drops. Before he could say anything further, I hopped into Uncle's car and drove off. I gave myself a mental fist pump in anticipation of this incredible return. LOL. How do you all feel about my return? Wish me luck at the upcoming hearing as well. Can you guess who received Eddie's custody and the majority of the child support? Selena, your girl, is the one. Robert was granted visiting rights, that's all. I'm not going to appeal since I don't think it will be pleasant to deny my child his father. I don't want Eddie to grow up and blame my egotistical drive to win for his dad's unfamiliar appearance, even though I am positive that we would win if I did. This is exactly what I told Robert, but I added a caveat. He must never take Eddie to see his sister and grandma. I won't think twice about removing his visiting privileges if I discover anything suspicious happening behind my back. In addition to my usual career, I have secured a highly lucrative freelance position. Additionally, I am establishing a blog for new single mothers, which is becoming very popular. I already have some sponsors. I invite you to see my blog as well. I can't express how thrilled I am to be a new mother. Right now, motherhood is going nicely for me. Being Eddie's mother makes me happy. In addition, my mother has returned. She finally believes that I made the correct decision in leaving that marriage after the abduction attempt. She thanked uncle and auntie excessively and apologized to me. She cried as she saw her grandchild for the first time. She cursed Dylan while cradling Eddie. She expressed her disbelief that someone would genuinely attempt to harm a child in such a terrible way. For a youngster, nothing hurts more than being taken away from its mother. I wholeheartedly concur. Dylan is still on trial. Uncle claims that he will undoubtedly go to jail given the evidence against him. Sarah, meantime, is already married to a wealthy elderly man she met at a party. It seems that after just 1 week of dating, they are getting married. A friend of mine who lives close to Robert's residence is providing me with updates on their family. All the tea is going to your daughter. LOL. Oh, and I had requested that Robert vacate our home. Come on, it was a present from my family, therefore it's only right that he moves out. This week, he moved out, therefore I'm going back to my former residence. I can't even begin to express how grateful I am to the Singh family. For 2 months, I remained with them at no cost. They refused to accept my attempt to pay them rent. They only collected a month's rent in the end, claiming that this was my uncle's fee for defending me and that they would not want any more money from me. Update 6. I apologize for not responding to you all sooner. God, being a mother is a full-time job. I know, it's been 6 months. I'm grateful for my mother and aunt. When I leave for work, they alternately watch Eddie. These 2 ladies have been a huge assistance. After returning home and enjoying some delicious and nourishing meals, I play with Eddie till he falls asleep. Every weekend, my uncle comes to visit us, and I also got to meet his daughter, who recently moved here from Germany. She is as kind as her parents, and she spent a week with us. I asked her to be my son's godmother just before she left for Germany. She sobbed uncontrollably and gave Eddie and me hugs. Eddie's godfather is my cousin, who gave the house as a gift. He wasn't shocked when I told him what had happened over the past 6 months. He claimed that he had reservations and constantly felt immature around Robert. He apologized for not being able to support me during that time because I was unable to contact him because he was out of the country. It wouldn't have helped even if I had succeeded in doing it. Eddie has experienced a lot of firsts in the last few months. After learning to roll over, he attempted to crawl. He spoke his first word as well. He really enjoys his bumblebee soft toy, but my mom says it's simply a random sound he made. Every month, Robert continues to provide new items. It felt incredibly weird when he came to visit us last week. The fact that the man I loved so deeply is now a stranger also kind of hurts me. But that's life, I suppose. Even though bad things happen, one must remain optimistic. I let Robert play with Eddie by himself. It was a smart move because I could do a lot of work while Robert took care of the infant. Robert had put baby Eddie to sleep before I finished all of my job. He appeared incredibly small and frail as he lay on Robert's breast. Robert was partly sleeping, and the thought of what might have happened made me very sad. According to my therapist, it's normal to feel this way and not feel bad about being sad for Robert. After gathering myself, I took a photo of the father and son. I framed that photo and gave it to Robert as a birthday present. After giving it a thorough examination, he thanked me. Being a father has, in my opinion, caused him to undergo a major transformation. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.